Hello, Stan State, and welcome to the Taking Care of You podcast. I'm your host, Lesley Cantu. This podcast is all about sharing information and resources for students, faculty, and staff to stay safe and support their well-being. In this interview, we sit down with the Director of Disability Resource Services at Stan State to gain insights into the inclusive support systems, collaborative initiatives, and future goals in place to enhance the educational experience for students with disabilities. Our guest is Marvin Williams, Director of DRS. Now let's get into the discussion. Hi, Marvin. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for asking.
All
So,
right.
you're obviously the Director of DRS, but who is Marvin Williams? Give me a little bit of
Lord.
your background.
Hey, you're going to ask the most difficult question there is.
Starting off with a hard one.
I think I'm still trying to figure out. But really, I am a misguided engineer, I guess. I've got a bachelor's in mechanical engineering and a master's in biomedical engineering, and have been working in the disabilities field now for almost 25 years. It's been a while. And I guess as a human, just someone who kind of cares about people, my work within the disabilities community is it's more than just a paycheck, right? So I'm doing this because I definitely want to help people, and I care about the cause of disability inclusion when we think about diversity, because it's another aspect of diversity. It's just one people really think about when we think of diversity.
How long have you been here at Stan State, and what's your experience with disability resource services?
Stan State's been just about it's 7 years, been almost 8, so we're coming up on another anniversary soon. My experience here has been as the director, so I came in right as the captain of the ship, as it were.
That's amazing. And what's your experience in disability resource services? What motivated you to be involved?
Goes way back to my undergrad. I had a buddy that I went to high school with, and he lost his leg to cancer. So he wanted to be able to get out and run. But at the time, the prosthetic leg, prosthetic leg has a foot on it as well. The foot that was on the leg couldn't withstand the forces that normal foot would undergo when you run. So he would run and break the foot.
Oh my
And so then
gosh.
you got to get another foot. So he's running and he's breaking that just through what he would normally do. The insurance company told him he had to stop, that he was abusing the foot, and that he basically had to stop running. Now, if you know anybody who's a runner, if you're a runner, the worst thing you can do is tell someone who's a runner they cannot run. And of course, he ended up becoming depressed with that and just having a whole lot of issues, because their solution was, well, just don't run. So I took a look at the foot that he had, and I was fortunate to win an undergraduate research fellowship. So I designed a little rubber pad that could go on the inside of his foot that would extend the life of the foot. So it would eventually break, but he would get a little more use out of it before it would break. And it was just doing that, I realized that was way more fun than kind of the typical engineering pursuits that I would have. For where we were located, Santa Clara, a lot of us would either go to like FMC or other defense contractors, and I didn't want to make cruise missiles or Bradley fighting vehicles. So I figured this is another way that I could help folks. So it just kind of led me off into this realm.
Nice. That's amazing. And is he still your friend today? Is he
Oh,
still
absolutely.
around? Is he still at Stan?
Oh no, he's not a stat. This is we were in the Bay together, and he actually works for the Department of Homeland Security.
Oh, wow.
So he's got now his. I always check out his leg. I call it his gear. I check out his gear whenever I see him. It's definitely, the technology has changed a lot. I think that for me with that, the whole thing was just kind of knowing that it's an option, that it's something that could happen. It's possible to do something to be able to help people. For him, it was nice to be able to, get out there and run at least a little bit longer and not have the insurance company, basically say no. It was just kind of like a perfect little marriage. So I know he goes out and runs, but nowhere near like how he used to.
Yeah.
I'm just glad to know that I was able to help, and just that I was able to see that it's possible to be able to help. It's just, you have to go out and learn and look for those opportunities.
I'm so happy that that's what motivated you and got you into this role today. To kind of change the subject a little bit, but not too much. What does disability mean?
Disability. I believe disability. So you've got like a social definition, you've got legal definitions. I see disability as being just basically a difference in how folks interact with the world. You can have different factors within you. They can be neurological, they can be physical, sensory, different things that can impact how you interact with the world as it's set up. When we think about disability from the legal definition, it's way more constrained. The legal definition, as we have it, is an individual has a disability if they have a physical or psychological impairment that significantly impacts major life activity. And so it's looking at major life activities. So studying is one of those things that would be considered that, working, taking care of oneself, stuff like that. So there's kind of a list, but the more social model of disability looks at how we, as people, the world is the world is definitely not designed for folks with disabilities. So that's where the exclusion comes in, right? If I've got a building that just has steps, anybody with a wheelchair, anybody that has any kind of mobility impairment is not going to be able to get into that building. So it's trying to reframe things and make it so that disability is not about not set up so people feel like they have to pity people with disabilities. That's the one thing which, I get people that will contact me all the time and say, "Hey, can we come and give a motivational speech to your campus?" I say, "Absolutely not. Why are you going to insult my students?" Students with disabilities that get up on Monday to come to class, guess what? They're like everybody else getting up on Monday to come to class. Do they need a medal for doing that? No. People would say, "Well, that's hard for you to say. How can you say?" It's not about pity. I don't want pity. They don't want pity. They want an education. They want an education. They want equity. Can you give them some equity and spare the pity? That's the
Yeah.
big thing. That's the difference. So one of the things that we're trying to do is kind of change that look, change that lens so that it's less of that medical, less of that feel sorry for these folks, and instead more of like, well, we want everybody here. This big tent, we want everybody in the tent too. We want everybody having fun. That's more along the lines of where we're trying to make things go.
Of course. Do you have to have a diagnosis to have a disability?
Yes. So I say there's a Venn diagram of disability, and the Venn diagram looks kind of like an egg. So if you think about like the white part of the egg on the outside being diagnosis, and then the yolk being disability. Not everyone with a diagnosis has a disability,
Mhm.
but if you have a disability, you do have a diagnosis. It's possible for folks to have a disability, and medical professionals or folks are still working on defining what the diagnosis is, because it could be something new. We have new stuff that's cropping up all over the place. So I think that, for people to think, well, I don't have a diagnosis, but I still have a disability, I would want to talk with them about what's going on.
Coming from a medical standpoint of getting a diagnosis, there's a lot of self-diagnosing that goes on. Can you explain a little bit about that and how maybe I know a lot happens on social media.
Yeah.
So, especially on TikTok, there's a bunch
Yes.
of doctors that maybe aren't doctors.
Well, I think that we see more of a rise in self-diagnosis. We've had self-diagnosis since forever. It became, with the internet, it's grown. So back way before your time, there was WebMD, and you would see people that would go on WebMD and just start kind of reading symptoms, and suddenly they go through and say, "Wait, I have that, I have that, I have that, I have that," and they'll start to diagnose themselves, misdiagnose themselves as having things. Then they finally will go talk to a medical professional and say, "Well, it's not quite that. When we're talking about this diagnosis, this is what we're talking about." There's a strong possibility for folks to self-diagnose and get it wrong. Is it possible for folks to self-diagnose and get it right? Absolutely, there is. There are a lot of inequities within the medical system. You do have folks who maybe don't have good access to doctors. That's why, our students they benefit from having access to the student health center. So anybody out there who's listening, if you don't have a doctor and you haven't seen a doctor, go to the student health center, because those folks can help you out. You will have folks who will, they might fire up TikTok and find out, you'll have someone saying, "I have this diagnosis and these are my symptoms, and so you might have it too." And then people just kind of, they'll start to go through and they will kind of tick off the symptoms. And there's more to it than that. I say medicine is an art. It's not a science. It's an application of a science, but there's a lot of art that's involved with it, because things can look different from human to human to human. So what having a cold for you looks like will be different from what a cold looks like for me. Having the flu for you will look different from how the flu looks like for me. There's a saying, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. You don't necessarily go through and say, everyone with this diagnosis will have all of these characteristics. There are some things that will be common to where you will say, yeah, but it's possible to say, well, no, they don't have this symptom. And so what you often see with social media is people go through and they'll say, well, I've got all of these things, therefore I must have this. I would say if you think that's the case, you probably want to go have a conversation with your doctor.
It's like they see it as a checklist and they're like, "Oh, I have this, this, and this. I must have it." Where it's like, "No, that's not exactly it." Or if
Right.
they only mark one thing off the checklist, then it's like, I don't think
Right.
that's exactly how that works.
One of the things that we see that's kind of like that is we will get folks who will come to us and say that they have bad testing anxiety. And testing anxiety is not a disability, but anxiety, you typically will see like generalized anxiety disorder that can be if it rises to that level. So people will come in and they'll say, well, I'm going to go take a test and I just get really, really nervous, or I get really, really anxious. I feel a lot of anxiety and I can't remember what I'm supposed to be, what's on the test. And that's kind of normal.
Mhm. I was gonna say
That's
anxious is an emotion.
Well, the thing is that before we had anxious, we also had nervous, and nervous still
Mhm.
exists, and
Yeah.
it's okay to be nervous. It's
Mhm.
just sometimes what we'll do is we will substitute that anxiety for those nerves. So what I tell folks is if you feel like this is really the case, go see a professional. So what a professional does is they'll take a look at everything and be able to provide that objective lens and be able to say, well, let's maybe do an anxiety inventory on you and let's see what's going on. And they might say, oh, well, yeah, based on this, yeah, there might be a little something, or there's a lot of something. So it's always best to go get that check. And I know people worry about, well, what about the expense? Through the Student Health Center on campus and also counseling and psychological services on campus, you've got free resources that are available to you. Make use of them. And if you're not able to come to campus, I know counseling and psychological services does have telehealth. I'm not sure if Student Health Center does, but probably best just to contact them to find out.
You would have no idea that it's all just like a well-oiled machine here on campus with all the departments that come here at the university to come together and help students. Can you kind of rename the ones that you guys collaborate with?
We work with everyone. I
Mhm.
mean, by virtue of trying to provide accommodations to students, but we work a lot with counseling and psychological services. We work a lot with the Student Health Center, housing and recreational life. We do have students who live on campus and who do have disabilities and maybe need some housing accommodations. We'll work with them. Everybody else, shout out to the rest of my student affairs folks, student leadership and development, the Academic Success Center, Learning Commons with their tutoring folks. I still see you out there. Y'all are wonderful. But then also academic affairs. So all of our faculty, we work with them perhaps the closest because we're working with them individually on a daily basis for
Yeah.
each and every single one of our students that have accommodations in the classroom. That's touching on academic affairs. We work with everyone and it's good. It really is. Every relationship has difficulties. Sometimes we have folks who just don't quite understand that a student needs accommodations or why. And we don't go and give what the student's diagnosis is. We don't give what the specifics about the disability are because that stuff is protected information. We will provide information, but typically it's a little more general, or if it's something that doesn't necessarily give what the diagnosis is, but talks about the functional limitations that a student has. That's the main thing that we'll deal in is functional limitations. So where are the areas where the student's not able to access the curriculum? Then we'll take a look at that and we'll deal mainly in that.
If a student goes into the DRS and they need accommodations, can you tell us a little bit about that process?
First, you have to fill out an application. Why? Because everybody has an application. You have to fill out an application so that we kind of have some idea who you are. People say, well, didn't you just get my information from the university? No, because that's not how that works. We don't give everything back to the university. So when you apply with us, all of that stuff stays in house. Next, we're going to need disability verification information. So we've got a form that you can have your doctor or therapist fill out and submit. That goes to them. They complete that, and then you can return that to us. Sometimes we'll have folks who will contact us and we'll get them that information so that when they apply, they will submit the form with it, or they can always apply and then submit the form later. We've got both paper and online forms. So if people want to, they want to register at home, they can if they want to come to the office. We usually hand them an iPad if they can't use that. We've got paper form they can fill out as well. So we try to make sure that we've got multiple modalities. Once we get the disability verification information, we'll go through everything. We'll meet with the student and we'll talk about what the issues are. We'll talk about where their functional limitations are, where they're having some difficulties in their classes. If they've had accommodations at other places before, what they've used, what's worked, what hasn't worked, sometimes what we'll hear is folks who don't know what's worked. We'll dig a little bit deeper and say, okay, well, let's talk about this class. How are things in this class? What really helped you? And a lot of times what we find is they don't really know what has worked. The process is very different between high school and college. So because the process is different between high school and college, they are coming into a whirlwind because everything is completely different. And it is as disorienting as it is coming here for your first day after you've drunk through the fire hose of new student orientation. It can be more frustrating and more disorienting when you're trying to get your accommodations because the process is nothing like how it was in high school. So we try to, I tell the students after our first meeting, all right, so I don't expect you to remember any of this, but I do expect you to know, here's my card. You can always call, you can always email with any questions that you have, and we'll go through this process. It's not, we're going to see you once and then walk you out the door and you're done for good. But, if you need to come back, we'll have you come back. And we're making some changes to where we're going to do a little more of what's called an invasive or proactive advising, where we're going to be having students, especially students that are newer to the system, come in more often. So we're going to have more required visits. We're going to start to have required visits where we're going to want you to come in and we're going to want to check on you because we do see that some students, they'll want to play hero ball. They'll want to go out there and think that they can just kind of do it on their own. Some of them can, the vast majority crash. So we want to make sure that that's not happening.
You just want to make sure that they're successful
Absolutely.
and they have the best plan. I know I mentioned students, but I'm guessing that this is also available. This is the same process for faculty and staff as well.
It's different.
Oh, okay.
So we only deal with students. For faculty and staff, what we're looking at is that's a human resources process. It's a completely different ballgame. We don't deal with faculty and staff. They can actually talk with, I do have a counterpart over in human resources. So I would definitely say contact human resources and they can definitely help you out.
You mentioned going to a therapist or a doctor, but for students who may not have that or may not have access to it, can the Student Health Center or CAPS help students get a diagnosis that can help them get to the DRS?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I was going to say. They do have access because through the Student Health Center, you've got medical doctors who are there. You've got licensed medical professionals. Same thing with CAPS. So what we're looking at is to make sure that a student is seeing a licensed medical professional and someone who's licensed in the state of California, because I will have folks who will, maybe they'll get online and they'll try to get a letter from somebody who's out of state and somebody who's not licensed here. And we will work with them and say, well, you can actually go see these people on campus. So yeah, they absolutely can go on campus and they can work with them. And I would say if they have not seen a doctor, a lot of folks haven't seen a doctor in a while, go to the Student Health Center, see someone, even if you're like, well, I guess I'm kind of feeling okay. No, go for a well visit because you don't want to go when something's wrong because oftentimes you can find something that might be wrong before it's got you doubled over in pain.
Kind of going off of that, what specific services and accommodations are available for students through the DRS?
Oh, that's interesting because we kind of don't have a menu. We work again off of what the functional limitations of the students are, so what the need is. But common ones that we do have some common ones. A testing accommodation, so we'll have folks that will come in and maybe testing in the classroom with everyone else is a bit too distracting for them. I had one student who came in, this at a different institution, but student would come in and they would test in our office because they needed to be able to stand up and talk through the questions because they had a processing disorder. And that was how they learned to be able to process.
Wow.
Was to actually be able to talk it through. And if they can't do that, they just can't do anything. Now, if I'm working on homework at home, I can do that all I want. But if I'm taking a test with like everyone else, I got like 20 other people in the class, I can't do that. I'm really going to throw everybody else off. But they can come in and, we go through that to where we have it documented. Once we know that's what's going on, then we'll say, well, let's take a look at this. So being able to come in for testing accommodations is common. We have some students who have processing issues where maybe as they're listening in lecture. So you're maybe looking at the professor, you're listening, and then you're going down to write, you're still listening. Well, some folks, as soon as they go down and start to write, it's like their ears cut off. So they look back up and it's like there's been a jump. They have no idea what was said during that time that they weren't attending to the professor. So being able to record lecture does that. I've had people say, well, does that mean that they can just drop off the recorder and go? No, you have to be there. You have to actually be there because you're responsible for your recording. Sign language interpreters, real-time captioners. It really just depends on what the individual needs. A popular one now that people are asking for is additional time on assignments. That's a little bit harder to do because in your syllabus, usually you have all of your assignments listed.
Mhm.
It's not like you're giving the assignment today to be turned in on Friday. So because you have all of the assignments listed, you have a bit more time to be able to plan. So that's going to be a harder one.
Mhm.
That's going to be a harder one unless you've got some really good justification behind that one.
I guess a follow up question to that would be, how does the university approach inclusivity and accessibility for students with disabilities?
We're getting better. We're really getting better. You might notice at commencement, you'll see teams of ASL interpreters. Previously, we used to have someone that was doing something called C sign, which is not American Sign Language. So we were insulting the deaf community, and that's just bad. So by making that change, we've made a difference. We've helped trying to make sure that we do a lot more front facing things like that and just let people know, hey, we're thinking about this inclusion on the front end as opposed to on the back end. This is what we're trying to do. And then trying to get people to do that on the front end as well. So trying to get the language on there. Hey, if you need special accommodations, please contact not my office, but contact the folks who are arranging it. We will work with them. Also, university events now, they will also help with that. But it's really just trying to make sure that folks see and are aware of individual disabilities and looking at, again, not as necessarily a charity case, but as we all want to have fun together. So let's all be together.
How does your office actively engage with students with disabilities to understand their unique needs and experiences? If you could just elaborate a little more, I know you've talked about it before.
Yeah. So what we'll do is whenever anybody comes in to see us that's needing services, we talk with them. That's a one-on-one with a disability advisor. And we engage in that interactive process where we're really just talking with them, learning about them, learning how they learn, learning just kind of what's going on with them. So we do that as opposed to just look at a diagnosis and then go to a chart and figure, okay, we're going to do this accommodation and do that. That's why the interview is important. And that's why, again, we don't have a menu of accommodations. We go off of what the individual needs. So we have to learn that. So conversation is how we do that.
If they're wanting more information on the accommodations that you guys do, where can they find the DRS office?
So we are located in the stunningly beautiful and brand new Vacher Library. We're on the first floor. We're in room 150 or suite 150, actually. And that's all the way at the end. As soon as you come right in through the front of the front doors of the library, if you go to the right and walk all the way towards the end, you'll see a little red sign up on your left that says DRS. That's where we're at. Come through the doors, going up to the desk. We got friendly people that will greet you and try to help you out with whatever questions you may have.
And I know you guys have a lot of amazing students that come through
Yeah.
and ask for your guys' help. Could you share a success story or a positive outcome resulting from the support provided by your office to a student with disabilities?
Well, it's funny. I love the fact that at commencement, no one or people rarely know who our students are. And we've had students who are Dean's medalists. We've had students who are really high achieving folks. But again, how we look at success is not necessarily how everyone else does. I love it when my folks graduate, but I love it when our folks know about themselves and they're able to succeed. So my favorite success story, I've got two. I've got one student who left campus and was gone for 15 years. And actually, she came back to campus on my first day. It was nice to be able to start this journey with her or for her to restart it and just kind of see her come in. And she was a little bit, not sure of, well, I don't know if I can do this. And it was just, not only are you going to do this, but we're going to do this together. You're going to be just fine. Just trying to get her to believe in herself and believe that she's supposed to be here. That's the biggest thing. She belongs here, and sometimes there were people that didn't necessarily make her feel like she belonged here, but then it was just like, no, you were in the right place. You're in the right place, right time. And I remember seeing her, she was saying, well, I don't know if I'm going to graduate. Or I was like, you're going to graduate. You're going to make it. Just keep, one class at a time. That's how we do this. One class at a time. We're going to get this. And I remember she was saying, well, I don't know if I want to walk. Like, you have to walk. I've got a daughter and you have to do this for your daughter. You got to show her for her journey that she can do this too, because she saw you do it. And she needs a chance to be able to scream and cheer for mom too. So I remember seeing her on day of commencement, and I just happened to bump into her. I said, is your daughter? Yeah, my daughter's here. And she had already gotten a job, and a bunch of people from her office, when she asked for the day off for commencement, they basically closed things down so that the folks from the office could come and cheer her on too.
How sweet.
So that was just, I like that. And, people will come in and they'll want to thank me. I say, don't thank me. I'm here doing a job. You've got people out there who love you and who are supporting you at 3 a.m. when someone's making you coffee because you need it to stay awake to study for that test. You thank that person. I'm in bed sleeping. So it's understanding that. And I told my folks in my office, we are not here for thank yous. We are not here for kudos. We are here to help students see that they can do this, because there's plenty of people out there that don't believe that they can. And we're here to at least help them see that they can, because once they leave us, they're on their own.
You guys are simply just a support system to show students that they can do it and that they do belong. Every student here, every faculty, staff, they belong here. That's Stan State. You belong.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How do you measure success in the context of a disability resource services?
If a student comes in and they're complaining about a class, they're complaining about the content, not about being able to access the class. And I've been in meetings where students are like, I don't know what's going on with this class. Well, let's have a meeting, get the faculty together. And so we'll have a meeting. 3 of us are there. And, they're talking all about content. And I'm just quiet. And so I'll say, y'all want me to go to Starbucks and get coffee for everybody? And when people forget that I'm in the room, they forget that my staff, that we're in the room, then we're doing it right. When it's all about that, when it's about everything but the individual's disability, we're doing it right.
It's kind of tying back to that, the whole, you don't want the pity party. They don't want this. They just want that equity.
Yeah. They want to be able to come here and major in everything that everybody else is majoring in, study like everyone else is, and complain about really hard tests or all the stuff that every other student wants. That's what they want.
What are some upcoming goals and initiatives that your office is working on to enhance support for students with disabilities?
One of the things that we're going to do, we're going to celebrate ourselves a little bit. So this spring, for the first time, we're going to have a party for all of our students, for university community, come out and just kind of celebrate our students. For a lot of folks, that can be difficult because there's still a lot of stigma that's around disability. So you have a lot of folks that don't want anyone to know they have a disability. And we understand, we respect those. We're not going to require that anybody participate. But for those folks who are fine with it and who have embraced their disability identity, we want to be able to celebrate and open that up for everyone. So that's going to be the biggest thing. We need to plan out when in spring it's going to be, but we're going to try to make it just fun for everyone. We want to take a look at doing more things to try to educate the community on disability rights movement and about what's going on with the disabilities community. We haven't set the date yet, but in February for Black History Month, we're also going to be having a presentation that's going to be looking at the emergence of Black Sign Language, because during early years in country's history, Black students who were deaf were not allowed to go to the deaf schools. So if they can't go to the schools where students are learning sign language, then they still need a means of communication. So that was the emergence of Black Sign Language. So we're going to have a speaker come in and talk about that. So just really the biggest thing that we're looking at is a lot more embracing of disability pride and a lot more understanding of disability is just another part of diversity, and not as something to be ashamed of, not as something to hide, but as something that folks can be proud of, that folks will accept as just, it's just another part of their identity, and something that we can get the university to plan for, to not look at as I have to do this special thing for this person, but this is something that we're just doing for everyone.
That's amazing. Just continuing shining a light and continue to broaden the resources available to students.
Yep, absolutely.
When we say students, we often think undergrad students. That's majority. I think that's a go-to unless you are a grad student. So are these resources and accommodations available to grad students, or are there specific ones? Can you kind of go into details about that?
Yeah, sure. Every student, undergrad, graduate, If you're coming here through Open University, it doesn't matter. As long as you're, taking classes through the university, then our office can work with you. So, and it can be the same types of accommodations. It really, again, depends on what the individual needs. So we'll take a look at that. And we'll also take a look at what the class requires. The only time that we can't do an accommodation, so this applies for undergraduate or graduate students or anybody, is if the accommodation is going to change the essential element of the class. So what makes that class that class? Kind of a layman's example is I can't go to KFC and order a Big Mac. That won't happen. So if I want to take a swimming class, but I don't want to swim, that is a fundamental alteration to the essential element of swimming in the water for the swim class. So I can't do that. If I want to be an English major, but I don't want to actually have to read, meaning consume any literature at all, that's a fundamental alteration to the essential element. I mean, if you're an English major, you're going to read a lot. So those types of things. So any accommodation which gets against that is something that we can't necessarily do because it's not the same class at that point.
It's a balancing act.
Yes, absolutely.
As we start to wrap up here, I just wanted to ask you, is there anything that we didn't cover that you would like to share?
Yeah, one aspect of our office that a lot of people don't realize is that we work closely with Title IX. I'm the campus deputy Title IX coordinator for pregnant and parenting students. And I have apparently the world's longest title with that title. But what we do, my office will work with students who are pregnant. The student will apply for services with us. We'll collect a pregnancy verification, and then we can help them with their getting pregnancy-related accommodations for their classes. Things are a little bit different between access granted because of disability and access granted under Title IX. So we often talk with students about that and just kind of make sure they understand what their rights are, make sure they know where the Title IX office is, and just kind of help them through. And we do a lot of work with the program and the student so that they understand how they can go through and continue to be a student, continue on their program as they can. Or sometimes they might have complications due to their pregnancy and they need to step out for a while. So we'll make sure that there is a path forward for how they can come back when they're ready to come back. We celebrate our students that, are having new additions to their families. And for whom, sometimes we will have students who do have complications with their pregnancies or are not able to go through the pregnancy, and they still are also granted protections under Title IX. So we'll work with them as well and also try to make sure that they have access to services through Student Health Center as well as counseling and psychological services.
Just for clarification, it's not pregnancy is labeled as a disability. It's just
No.
finding the access for the limitations that they have during pregnancy, correct?
Correct. Pregnancy is not a disability. That's one of those things that kind of people say, well, why is your office handling it? Because we handle accommodations every day. And so we're the best suited to be able to do this. But interestingly, Title IX says that a pregnant student should be afforded the same accommodations as a student with a temporary disability. So they kind of nudge people our direction with that.
You kind of mentioned something that I had a question on. It was short-term disability.
Yes.
What is that?
Temporary disabilities. Let's say you're an avid skier. You like to go out and ski, you break your leg. Now you're on crutches. It's going to take you a little bit longer to get to classes. And, people say, we've got a really small campus. For a small campus, if you have to hop across campus, you realize just how big the campus is. So we'll help those students out. We'll help students. We have a lot of students that will come in with concussions, a lot of our athletes, they might get a concussion. And so we'll work with them, work with their faculty on that. Anything that is short, if your doctor says, well, no, this is a short-term thing, and it's going to keep you from being able to be a student, then we say, well, talk with us and let's see what's going on. People will come to us and they'll say, well, I have COVID. We don't deal with COVID. We don't deal with the flu. If you have long COVID has been actually looked at as a disability to where that could be temporary. That could also be extremely long-term to where we might treat it as permanent. I've got some students with long COVID who have been with us. One student needed services for 8 months. Another student, it's 2 years and they still have services because they're still dealing with the effects of long COVID. So it really just depends. Again, this is where we're doing a lot of work with the individual. So if someone's out there, they've got a broken arm, they've got a broken leg, they've got a concussion, we tell them, come in and talk to us.
Thank you, Marvin, for sharing your expertise and also sharing the resources students have from Disability Resource Services on campus. I would like to end the podcast with just a simple question. What is something that you like to do personally to take care of yourself?
Personally, to take care of myself, I am a gamer. So you will often find me on the Fantasy Star New Genesis or playing any kind of cozy game. Stardew Valley, that Stardew Valley is my jam. So I will be there. I'll do that, just kind of disconnect and get into a completely different world. That's
Yeah.
something that I enjoy.
Well, thank you again, Marvin. And thank you for all the things that you shared on this podcast.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Taking Care of You podcast. You can listen to this episode and past episodes at csustan.edu/podcast or on your favorite podcast platform. Be sure to subscribe and follow to be notified of any new episodes. Stay safe, warriors, and take care.